This is the third of our digital events on the Zoomscope. I'd been hoping to host Kathleen at the Bakehouse for some time, but academic work and distance has made that impossible. So it really is an enormous privilege to have her. Welcome, a big Bakehouse welcome to the wonderful Kathleen Jamie.
Here we all are. Here I am in my garret, and the rain is just cold rain has just started here as well. Strange spring we're having. I assume you all can hear me because nobody said they can't. So I'm going to start and read some poems for the next half an hour or so. Old work that's in my selected poems. This book came out a couple of years ago. And then I'll move on to some new things. I'll start with some poems and carry on with some poems and end with some poems. What am I saying? The Wishing Tree. I stand neither in the wilderness nor fairyland, but in the fold of a green hill, the tilt from one parish into another. To look at me through a smear of rain is to taste the iron in your own blood, because I hoard the common currency of longing, each wish, each secret assignation. My limbs lift, scabbed with greenish coins. I draw into my slow wood fleur-de-lis, the enthroned Britannia. Behind me, the land reaches toward the Atlantic. And though I'm poisoned, choking on the small change of human hope daily beaten into me, look, I'm still alive, in fact, in bud. So I hope that comes over as a kind of grimly optimistic poem, which is what it was meant to be. The first swallows have been sighted. Swallows and martins are bravely making their way home through the snow. This one is called Swallows. This is actually written in the south of Spain, where they were abundant. And some years ago, I was staying in a friend's house, which she said she was doing up, but I liked it as it was, with holes in the roof and tumble down stairwells and things. So the swallows could actually come into the house and roost in the house and then fly around as we were having dinner, which I actually really loved. Swallows. I wish my whole battened heart were a property like this, with swallows in every room. So at ease they twitter and preen from the picture frames like an audience in the gods before an opera. And in the mornings wheel above my bed in a mockery of pity before winging it up the stairwell to stream out into light. I took myself in the bike recently up a quiet glen, and it was quiet other than the sound of the frogs. It was frog day, and they were all come down to the wee pools and ditches, and they were just heaving with puddocks and toads and frogs, all mating and laying their spawn. And you could hear this wonderful low roar, rumbling of froggy noise. So I read this in homage to frogs. But for her green palpitating throat, they lay inert as a stone, the male fastened like a package to her back. They became, as you looked, almost beautiful. Her back, mottled to leafy brown, his marked with two stripes, pale as overwintered grass. When he bucked once, neither so much as blinked. Their oval, gold-lined eyes held to some bog-dull imperative. The car that would smear them into one, belly to belly, tongue thrust utterly into soft brain, approached and pressed on. Oh, how we press on. The car and passengers, the slow creatures of this earth, the woman by the verge with her hands cupped. I know it's difficult to concentrate, I think, in I found it difficult to concentrate this whole past year. I don't know about you, but listening intently is difficult. I appreciate that. But nonetheless, here's a slightly longer poem about a basking shark, which I saw some years ago, just inches off the coast of Skye. I was lying on the cliff looking down about maybe 200 feet down into the water. And I realized there was this thing, this entity hanging in the water. And it took me a wee while to realize what exactly it was, because you don't usually see a basking shark in its huge entirety. You usually see the dorsal fin sticking up, but to see the whole thing just hanging there, it still gives me a shiver. Basking shark. When I came to the cliff edge and lay down, all beneath was space, then green tinted sea, so clear it revealed level below level, not void, but a living creature. Behind me, peat moor careered in land. I gripped sweet rock, but it was only resting, berthed as though drawn by the cliff's peculiar backwash, precisely that its oar-heavy body and head, the tail fin measuring back, forth like a haunted door, could come to sense the absolute limits of its realm. While it hung, steady as an anvil, but for the fin's corrective rippling, dull and dark and buoyed like a heart that goes on living through a long grief, what could one do but watch? The sea heaved, Fulmar slid by on static wings. The shark, not ready yet to re-enter the ocean, travelled there, peaceable and dumb, waited and was watched, till it all became unbearable, whereupon the wind in its mercy breathed again, and far below the surface glittered and broke up. So from time to time, I write a wee bit in Scots. I've been writing some wee lyrics in Scots lately, so it's kind of on my mind. But this next one is called Heme, and it's a rough translation from a fragment of Hölderlin's, a poet I'm very fond of. Heme. What's to ken if whiles I donner your back braes so yard, and poo wild berries to slocken my love for you. Here where jags o' roses and gane trees pit out their sweet air, aside the birks at noon, when in the yellow glebe growing corn rishels and the ichors nod like at Hurst. But now I blow the aches lift, where I wonner and spear heavenward, yonder wheel Kent bell jows gowden notes at the hour the birds walking in smare, and as wheel. A wee poem called Daisies. The poetry is one, I think, the only art form that allows you to inhabit other creatures, speak as them, or listen to them, give them a voice. And if I find that business of voicing, advocating for other species and other people sometimes really quite fascinating. How to make a tree speak, how to make a snake speak in a sensible way, not a caricature. I find that politically very interesting. This is Daisies. We are flowers of the common sward, that much we understand. Of everything else we're innocent. No creator laid down such terms for our pleasant lives. It's just our nature. Were we not so, we couldn't be daisies, closing our lashes at the first suggestion of Venus. By then we're near exhausted. Evening means sleep, and surely it's better to renew ourselves than die of all that openness. But die we will, innocent or no, of how night spills above our garden, a twin glittering there for each of us. Die never knowing what we miss. A bird I'm very fond of is the dipper, which of course you'll see darting up rivers and streams. It's the only bird apparently that sings all the year round, although they're quite solitary. And this Singing all year round accounts for how I heard one in December, singing its wee heart out. The Dipper. It was winter, near freezing. I'd walked through a forest of firs when I saw issue out of the waterfall a solitary bird. It lit on a damp rock, and as water swept stupidly on, wrung from its own throat, supple, undamnable song. It isn't mine to give. I can't coax this bird to my hand that knows the depth of the river, yet sings of it on land. Okay. A poem called The Beach. Now this big westerly's blown itself out, let's drive to the storm beach. A few brave souls will be there already, eyeing the driftwood, the heaps of frayed blue polyprop rope, cut loose, thrown back at us. What a species, still working the same curved bay, all of us hoping for the marvellous, all hankering for a changed life. So the next poem is called Ospreys, and our local ospreys, like all the ospreys, are just arriving back now. They've just been sighted in the last 2 or 3 days. And the poem contains the phrase a Chuchet storm, which is the same as the lambing storm, which is exactly what we're having now, a blast of winter weather in April. Chuchet is a lapwing. And the old shepherds used to call it a lambing storm because it was a thing that happened quite often. They think it's rare, but it's not. There's old words for this. Blasts of snow in late March or early April. So that's what a Chuchet storm is. And this is Ospreys. You'll be wondering why you bothered, beating up from Senegal just to hit a Chuchet storm, late March blizzards and raw winds, before the tilt across the A9 to arrive mere hours apart at the self-same riverside Scots pine and possess again the sticks and fish bones of last year's nest, still here, pretty much like the rest of us, gale-battered, winter-worn, half-toppled away. So red up your cradle on the treetop, claim your time from the shining estates of the Firth or the Troutstock Loch. What do you care? Either way, there'll be a few glad whispers round town today. That's them, both of them, they're in. Now it's, I'll read a poem about May because it's going to be May. It will be May soon. It'll be May next month. My favourite month. I really would give all of August for another week of May. May. Again the wild blossom, powering down at dusk. The gin trees a lather at the hill foot, and a blackbird telling us what he thinks to it, telling us what he thinks. How can we bear it? A fire-streaked sky, a Firth decked in gold, the grey clouds passing like peasant folk lured away by a prophecy. What can we say the blackbirds failed to iterate already? Night calls, the windows of next door's glass house crimson, then go mute. There's there are times when I write nothing and they can last for 2 years and I've given up worrying about this. You know, it comes and it goes. And there's, you know, why, I don't know. But so far it's always come back again. This time I'm beginning to wonder, but one always wonders. Anyway, sometimes I write little fragments when that's the case. So this is a wee fragment. It's just called Fragment. Roe deer, breaking from a thicket, bounding over briars between darkening trees. You don't even glance at the cause of your doubt. So how can you tell what form I take? What form I take, I scarcely know myself. Adrift in a wood in wintertime at dusk. Always a deer breaking from a thicket, For a while now, this is how it's been. Okay. I'm reading to you from my attic room, and it's got 3 Velix windows from which I can often see the moon, and the moon sees me. So this poem is called The Study, and it's about that effect. Moon, what do you mean? Entering my study like a curiosity shop, stroking in mild concern the telescope mounted on its tripod, the books, the attic stair. You who rise by night, who draw the inescapable world closer, a touch to your gaze, why query me? What's mine is yours, but you've no more need of these implements than a deer has, browsing in a glade. Moon, your work-worn face bright outside unnerves me. Please, be on your way. A poem called Hawk and Shadow. Hawk and Shadow. I watched a hawk glide low across the hill, her own dark shape in her talons like a kill. She tilted her wings, fell into the air. The shadow coursed on without her like a hare. Being out of sorts with my so-called soul, part unhooked hawk, part shadow on parole, I played fast and loose, keeping one in sight while forsaking the other. The hawk gained height. Her mate on the ground began to fade, till hill and sky were empty, and I was afraid. I've reached the stage with these poems I'm reading now, because they're some years old, that I can't remember the person who wrote them. You know, I'm reading them thinking, did I write this? It's a strange one. They do vanish. One changes all the time. We are not yet done with our changes, as Stanley Kunitz said. And a poem on that sort of note of stasis and change, and being ready for change but not being able quite to get there, is this one called The Overhaul. It's the title poem of a book I wrote maybe 10 years ago. And it's a midlife poem, definitely. I saw this boat hauled out of the water ready for some work, and I felt for it. The Overhaul. And it was actually called The Lively, but it wasn't going anywhere. Look, it's the Lively, hauled out above the tide line, up on a trailer with 2 flat tires, what, 14 foot? Clinker built, and chained by the stern to a pile of granite blocks, but with the bow still pointed westward down the long Vaux, down toward the ocean where the business is. Inland from the shore a road runs, for the crofts scattered on the hill where washing flaps, and the school bus calls, and once a week or so the mobile library. But see how this duck egg green keel's all salt weathered, how the stem, taller like a film star than you'd imagine, is raked to hold steady if a swell picks up and everyone gets scared. No, it can't be easy when the only spray to touch your boards all summer is flowers of scentless mayweed. When little wavelets leap less than a stone's throw with your good name written all over them. But hey, Lively, it's a time of life thing. It's a waiting game. Patience, patience. It's a sort of lockdown poem, I suppose, as well, isn't it? Okay. Poem, another poem about the moon, why not? Another poem about the moon entering this very room. This time it's called Moon. Last night, when the moon slipped into my attic room, disguised as an oblong of light, I sensed she'd come to commiserate. It was August, She travelled with a small valise of darkness, and the first few stars returning to the northern sky, and my room, it seemed, had missed her. She pretended an interest in the bookcase, while other objects stirred, as in a rock pool, with unexpected life. Strings of beads in their green bowl gleamed, the paper-crowded desk. The books, too, appeared inclined to open and confess. Being sure the moon harboured some intention, I waited, watched for an age, her cool gaze shift first toward a flower sketch pinned on the far wall, then glide to recline along the pinewood floor before I'd had enough. Moon, I said, we're both scarred now. Are they quite beyond you, the simple words of love? Say them. You're not my mother. With my mother, I waited unto death. The last collection I published was in 2015, and it brought together poems I'd written the previous year, 2014. I challenged myself to write a poem a week, which meant I had to abandon the previous very careful, long, slow shapeliness. And you can just see how that little, rather exquisite 4-line stanzas, that had to go out the window. And I had to loosen up and just every Monday morning, like a newspaper columnist, I suppose, or a blogger, think, right, what am I doing this week? And I loved it. I loved the challenge. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know if I could do it again. So I've got 48 poems, which ain't bad. And the first one I'm going to read is called Glacial, and it concerns the hill, which, if I could turn this laptop around, you could see it were it not dark and raining. The hill behind town here, from which one can see very far north. Glacial. 1,000-foot slog, then a cairn of old stones, hand-shifted labour, and much the same river shining way below, as the Romans came, saw, and soon thought the better of. Too many mountains, too many one-chancy tribes whose habits we wouldn't much care for, but could probably match. Too much grim north, too much faraway snow. Let's bide here a moment, catching our breath, and inhaling the sweet scent of whatever whinbush is flowering today, and see for miles, all the way hence to the lynx return, the re-established wolf. When I was a very small, I was born in Scotland, but we soon moved down to Teesside. So my earliest memories are of steelworks and chemical plants and the industry and the smell in the air. But then when I was 7, we came back again. So it remains a particular part of my memory. So these 2 tiny poems are called Corporation Road 1 and 2. Corporation Road is the most wonderfully municipal address, isn't it? But that's where we stayed. Corporation Road 1. One night in my father's arms, I was carried from our brick-built semi, shown the stars above the steelworks glare. Corporation Road 2. On my red swing, I swept high as its iron chains allowed. The sky I rushed toward disdained to gather me. I birdied up, dizzied by its blue, its ungovernable clouds. Come back, said the earth. I have your shadow. It's soon, as I say, going to be May again, and the blossom is out. So this little poem is called Blossom. There's this life and no hereafter, I'm sure of that. But still I dither, waiting for my laggard soul to leap at the world's touch. How many May dawns have I slept right through, the trees courageous with blossom? Let me number them. I shall be weighed in the balance and found wanting. I shall reckon for less than an apple pip. The title poem of that last book I mentioned was The Bonniest Company, which is a phrase that I somehow found my way towards in this poem, which is about hinds, a whole load of hinds that I saw one day. I'd previously, years before, written a poem about stags, and I thought one day I must balance it up with a poem about hinds. And this is it, the hinds. Walking in a waking dream, I watch 19 deer pour from ridge to glen floor, then each in turn leap, leap, the new raised peat dark burn. This was the distaff side, hinds at their ease, alive to lands held on long lease in their animal minds. And filing through a breach in a never-mended dike, the herd flowed up over heather slopes to Scree, where they stopped and turned to stare, the foremost with a queenly air as though to say, aren't we the bonniest company? Come to me, you'll be happy, but never go home. I don't know if we'll get much travelling this summer, maybe within Scotland. That's all right. If you had to choose a place to be, Scotland would be fine for me. This next poem is called Fiannish, which is possibly my favourite place. It's on the island of North Rona, so not easy to get to. There's a flat peninsula reaches northwards, and because it's very, very stormy, nobody goes there. There's always interesting things to find there. Lots of wonderful beachcombing. Fiannish. Well, friend, we're here again, sauntering the last half mile to the land's frayed end, to find what's laid on for us, strewn across the turf. Gull feathers, bleached shells, a whole bull seal, bone dry, knackered from the rut. We knock on his leathern head, but no one's home. Change, change, that's what the terns scream down at the seaward rocks. Fleet clouds and salt kiss. Everything else is provisional, us and all our works. I guess that's why we like it here. Listen, a brief lull, a rock pipit's seed small notes. Right. I think I'll move to the most recent, very, very few poems I've written recently. It seems to have gone on its peregrinations again. Maybe it'll come back and maybe it won't. This one is called Coddling and Flounder, which is the first time I've ever gotten a fish into a poem, I think. Coddling and Flounder. Sometimes a poem will start just because you think, I just want to get that vocabulary, those words into a poem somewhere. Coddling and flounder, the fishermen reply, baiting their hooks by the pier behind the shopping mall. They arrive on the surge when the dock gates open, but we throw them back. At the oil berth, deckhands prep the Apache 2, a red-hulled pipe layer. Maybe it'll sail soon, watched from the mall by shoppers eating pizza. Aye, mourn the fishermen, all used to be shipyards here. And before the shipyards, salt marsh, dunes. But there's cormorants on the breakwater, backs turned, wings raised, attuned, or so I used to fancy, to summonses pelagic, too wild for human sense. I don't think that now. East of Aberdeen, another gas field's been discovered. But last month, guess what? Humpbacks, 3, feeding in the outer firth. Good luck, I say, ostensibly to the fishermen, but secretly I'm speaking to the fish. Flounders, I whisper, conceal yourselves under the green liquid deadweight of the moon. And coddling, don't be kettled here, this sullen square kilometre of dock. Try to sliver out alongside when the next ship sails. Just go, avoid whales, stravage the 7 oceans as you grow. Both my mum and dad are dead now, and I wrote this poem that actually only come to me in dreams 2 or 3 times, but it's special when they do. I think this began as a dream. It's called My Parents. In the hallway of our 50s semi, my folks stand radiant because I say you're dead now. You know that, don't you? Here, come forward. Dad, you two, just a few steps nearer the mirror framed above your half-moon telephone table. And side by side, see how your faces glow now you're no longer alive behind the rattly door that opens to the path which you, Mum, lined so artfully with sea-worn pebbles brought home from our holiday beach. Then the street, where the neighbour's lad still stripping down his purple cortina, and a gang of us bairns is playing dodgeball, because it's a Saturday. So when you shout us in, we'll play it, oh, just a bit longer, please, till late. And this next, which is the second last I shall read, is called Our Garden, and it's a paean to the midden, which my husband has presently promised he's going to clear, but I will miss it. Our garden. Are we done building now? Done with heaping up in this earth? And the leftovers, slates, slabs, rubble that might yet come in useful, a stack of bricks stamped Bourtree Hill, Dungavel, kilns long cooled out of the red heat, lie half smothered under moss and couch grass and sprays of pink-flowered Herb Robert. And a rain-filled butler sink, a little duckweed, a couple sunken stones, and its weed-shaded enamel rims become a frog palace. 5 baths today, the big green gold sharp-hipped frog king, the thumb-length golden-eyed twins, one resting its chin on the other. 9 is the record one hot August afternoon. Where do they go otherwise? Hiding amongst the rubble, which will still be here after we are ash, their eyes apparently unseeing unless their shadows pass too close, and then they jump. And I'd like to close with a poem written last month. And this one truly is a lockdown poem. Just February was awful, actually, wasn't it? Did everybody find February really bleak? And one day I just had it. I sat and cried and thought, this is never going to end. I'm never going to see my children. I'm never going to see my friends ever again. You know, I think everyone must have had those moments. So nothing for it. I had to take the dog and go the same walk again, up to the same tree again. But this time I thought, I'll make myself write some wee phrases, only phrases, not big fancy lines, not a big fancy poem, just 2 or 3 wee phrases, which I did. And then I got home and wrote them out properly. And just messing about with them, I realized if I split them, I don't know if you can see that, laid them out on the page in an unusual way, I felt they were balanced, as if there was a yoke between them. And having written this, I thought, oh, it's a rebalancing poem. And I felt much better for it. So here it is. Now I shall leave you with this lone tree. Trudging again to Lone Tree Lookout, high in the grasslands of Sparrow Craig Hill. Pallid winter sunshine enlivens the skyline. Scarves of mist wander the strath below. No sparrows, just a crow cawing from a pylon, fox-turds by a tussock, pin-sized bones. There you wait, crooked elder of the pasture. I step inside your shadow, outstretched on shallow snow. Our 2 forms merge, my lungs breathe within you. May a missel thrush sing high in my branchy mind. There we go. Thank you very much. If anybody's there, is anybody there?